everyone, my name is Lucy and welcome to the Art of Worldbuilding. I have been on this world for about 2.5 years now, making videos on it the entire time. And it's when it comes to making videos, you guys know the drill, you gotta make a video, you gotta build things. So it had me thinking a lot about what should I build, what's gonna make sense in my world, what's going to tell a story. I've stopped building just for myself and I started building for a wider, bigger narrative. And I don't think I'm an expert at it, definitely not, but I thought I could share some things I've learned that will hopefully take you from a complete beginner, like me when I started, to somebody who can maybe start bringing a little bit of life into their builds. So if you want to take your builds from just a random Minecraft build into a living, breathing world, well, let's start. First off, what is world building? Well, world building is essentially what it sounds like. You build a world. This term is used in a lot of media when it comes to creating a setting for something. So whether that's games, movies, Dungeons & Dragons campaign, anything possibly where you're telling a story, that's world building. You're imagining a world, you're creating a world, and it makes a massive difference whether that world makes sense or not as to how much people are going to enjoy the story. Your world may be the same as Earth, but with a minor twist, or your world could be completely sci-fi, your world could be steampunk, your world could be a combination of the things, it could be fantasy, it could be medieval, it could be anything you want. And I think where people get stuck is they try to settle on a theme too early, and then they get bored of that theme, or they don't like it anymore, or it's too difficult to build, and they just stop. They stop playing in the world, which is definitely not what you want for a world. So before jumping into a specific theme or concept or aesthetic, so the first thing I want you to consider is sleep. Hear me out. Everybody needs to sleep, and this is included in the game of Minecraft. Your residents in your builds are going to need somewhere to sleep. So where do they sleep? Where do these villagers sleep? Let me pretend a little bit here and imagine that these guys go home at the end of the day. Well, where are they going? They're probably going to have to go to one of the cottages over here. For example, there is my villager breeding hall, and this is a bad example, but it's full of beds. So maybe they all live here in this villager breeder place. But potentially, maybe they go down this way, and I have a little cottage over here with some guys trying to escape. And if we go inside here through this cottage, we have a couple beds here for them to use. These may be occupied already. And the same thing applies to you as a player. Whether your player is a character in the story or not is completely up to you. But as you play the game, if you want to stick in a forever world and you want to enjoy playing the game, you're gonna end up leaving beds everywhere, right? So I really recommend setting up cottages or buildings, just decorate it slightly, pop a bed in there, a shulker monster, that's just part of building a lot. Put beds in places. These beds are gonna serve a purpose. For example, this little cottage is a pumpkin house. And you're like, why is there a pumpkin house? Well, you can see that there's a lot of pumpkins here, and if we zoom out a little bit, there's an even bigger pumpkin. So there's obviously something happening here with this pumpkin patch that is maybe a little bit magical, a little bit mysterious. How did those people that live here, how did they interact with the situation? Well, they've gone ahead and they've carved a smaller giant pumpkin into a little cottage for them to sleep. So maybe this is where the pumpkin farmer lives. And you might say, Nacy, I don't want to leave random houses everywhere. This doesn't help at all. But you have to consider that beds and places that people sleep in could be anywhere. For example, this is one of the beds I use all the time as it's kind of central to my base as to where I build. It's a little boat, and we'll get onto boats and transports later, but there is a little bed in here. So perhaps we have a wandering trader that comes in and sleeps in this boat. I can use it, it's very useful. But it also does mean something in the wider world. When you start your forever world, a place to sleep is probably going to be the first thing that you're going to build. It was for me. It was this tiny little cottage. This was my starter base. It's got a bed in it. I still use it because it's in a good location for beds. If you want to expand on the concept of sleep, you could also think about, why do people sleep there? For example, I have a giant windmill here. It's got a bed. It kind of makes sense. It's the most simple of the reason. Why do people sleep in the windmill? Well, it's because they work these fields. You create a structure and then you can expand onto it. These fields also serve a different purpose, food, which is our point number 2. When you play the game of Minecraft, you're not only going to need to sleep, you're also going to need to eat. It's just like real life. And when it comes to world building, food is surprisingly a very effective tool. in creating an immersive experience, an immersive universe. Now, depending on your playstyle, whether or not you actually have food farms, it's up to you. But if you do decide to build farms, definitely try to think about why you're building them, where they are, and what sort of food would actually make sense. What feeds the population of the world you're building? For example, I have a lot of wheat. This is an aesthetic part of wheat. This wheat field, when you look at it next to a windmill, you think, they grow wheat. Behind it, I have a couple villagers set up in automatic wheat farms that go and harvest this all for me. So it sort of ties them both together. This is not quite as pretty as, of course, the wheat field. And this is the main food production area of my island, because my base is on an island. If you haven't noticed, I'll zoom out. Because it's on this big, massive island. Let's go higher and higher. Yeah, big, massive island. So our food can only take up so much space of the island without fighting the other infrastructure. So we have wheat growing there, we have pumpkins growing there, and you see I've converted the pumpkin field into something that tells a bit of a story. Yes, to eat pumpkins, but there's also magic here with the pumpkins. And if we go inside, I have hidden a pumpkin and a melon farm. Oh, it's broken. I've hidden a pumpkin and a melon farm in here. When it comes to food, think about, where does it come from? Is it grown? Is it transported? Is it imported? And how does it travel to the villagers? So this is my sort of central plaza with all the little market stalls. I knew I had to set up a way that in universe, the food from both the farmer's field and the pumpkin patch on the opposite side would be able to travel to the city. And so we have a massive road coming on from this way and going all the way over there that connects everything and meets up here in the middle into the city. So even though my food locations are a little bit spread out, it also passes by a barn on the way, which is very handy. You can imagine that there'd be traveling merchants and wagons and stuff going up this massive, terrible staircase. Probably not very wagon friendly actually, but just think of it as like an uphill instead. All going over here to, well, maybe this guy that apparently sells meat. Rabbit stew specifically. So yes, roads are incredibly important in your world building journey. And that's why transport is point number 3. Transport can mean a whole bunch of different things. It can mean the way that your people, yourself as a character or a player, or just resources and geopolitics all kind of work. So for example, because I am on an island, it has a little river sort of separating the island from the mainland, so to call. So we have a little port here, which is very unfinished, but we have a little port here where our boats can dock. And as you can see, there's a path up from the little dock all the way to the city. Similar here, we have a bigger, maybe a more ship kind of dock here, a little pier, where maybe people go out and fish, or maybe traveling big ships come in here and stop at these ports. And then again, a path all the way to the city. I think stuff like that is super fun to build. It's really fun to build paths in general, I think. Especially if you let yourself play around with the colors of the paths. Like, I love to do a gradient on mine, so it goes from this sort of stony, deep slate road all the way to a more natural sort of dirt path. Maybe this is a less used road or less maintained road than the ones up there. Even your paths can tell a story. For example, over here, well, not many things go here currently because it's very beaten up. Maybe it's very beaten up because the horses live here, which is another mode of transport. If you're going to use horses, I would say definitely build a stable. Where do your horses live? Who breeds them? Is this a community stable? Or is this a stable for travelers to come in and pay? Or is somebody raising horses here? I think in my case, it's more of a somebody raises horses here. I built this super early on and definitely didn't think it through. But I did think about, where do these horses get parked after? You know, your villagers or your people or whoever goes around your town and they want to park their horses. Well, I have little horse parking huts everywhere. These actually have redstone hooked up, so if there's something parked, it will give off a smoke signal, which I don't use now that I can fly. But it was very useful to see, where did I leave my horses behind? I tried to space these out and pop them next to the main sort of commonly used areas. And of course, you have your air transport as well. So not only do you have your ships and your ports, and you have your your horses and your stables, but if you want to go down the more fantasy or sci-fi route, or even modern day, you might have airports or gas ports or anything like that. So in this case, the closest thing in my world is this little gas docking bay, which serves and actually kind of more of a military scouting purpose in the lore here. It's meant to be a kind of scouting tower that's got happy gas, and if you go up there, you can get all the way to the top very slowly. Very slowly, we can get to the top and scout out the area. Actually, let me get to the top here just to show you. There we go. This gives a pretty good view of sort of this side. You can see the river. You maybe can see the ships coming in. Similarly, I have a lighthouse with similar scouting, although it's kind of pointless because there's ice. But anyways, in case you have ships that can go through ice, this lighthouse provides really good views of things coming in from this direction of the sea. So that's just another way to consider, you know, your transport. Okay, onto our last gameplay mechanics influence point of the world building, because we are doing this in Minecraft. Think about your resources. Every Minecraft world has got a bunch of resources, some renewable, some farmed, some you go and mine by hand. But if you're using them to tell a story, you can make your farm as pretty, of course, but you can also consider things like, where do these resources come from? Who collects them? Why are they used and how are they used, and things like that. So for example, I have a little quarry here, a little tiny quarry, and next to this quarry, which by the way doesn't go anywhere, but you don't need to fully flesh out every single build. Just this by itself, you can go through and you're like, yeah, there's rocks here with some sort of pulley system. They're clearly getting rocks from underground. Next to it, we have the stonemason's house. So these resources are being put into this definitely very safe and secure villager hall with my stonemasons, for example. That's one way to tell a very tiny kind of self-contained story. Quarry, stonemasons. Now, of course, that quarry was just decorational for villagers, but we can have things that are useful as well. For example, I have a big mine entrance down here. It goes way underground, all the way to bedrock. And I can actually go down there and strip mine. It leads to a couple caves. It's really good. But to tell a story with this mine, well, there's things with like the ground being warm here and stuff. There's a lot of plants coming out, but that's not the point. The point is, this is actually right opposite of where my smeltery is, which has my lava farm and my super smelters in it. So it's like, these are things I am going to need in my world. I'm going to need a mine and I'm going to need a place to smelt things. But because these things are close together and it's like a path, it's like quite a beaten up path going between these two things, it sort of tells a story. These resources that come from the mines get taken to the smeltery here. And maybe from the smeltery, it then gets transported into other parts of the world. For example, that's my storage room. So maybe that's the community storage. It goes straight from the smeltery to the community storage. There's fun things you can do with the builds as well. I super recommend taking your boring Minecraft things, like your super smelters, your storage rooms, your farms, and just trying to make them a bit more aesthetic. I have a couple examples of aesthetics farms because I've basically done that with every single farm, but I do really like this one. If you can't tell what this is, hopefully you can tell what kind of vibe it's meant to be. It's like an overgrown, spooky kind of ruins, right? You know, it's all grey, and can you tell that I built this when the pale oak drop came out? Yeah. So this is actually, if I go down here, this is my creeking farm. So that's been blocked by an enderman, but there's a bunch of resin in there because at night time I can turn this on and farm my resin. So it's a very functional farm. It's hidden in this kind of creepy overgrown ruin because the creakings themselves are, well, a little bit scary. So it's all been put here onto this one corner, and then I've expanded that idea a bit further and gone into with this haunted house that isn't connected to a farm, but it has my failure villagers in it, which somehow got attacked by a zombie and turned into zombies, and it just makes perfect sense now. I've really taken the storyline that happened just from building a spooky farm in one corner. I've turned it into a whole area that's kind of haunted and spooky, and it's honestly one of my favorite parts of the world to play around and play in. But of course, your resources don't necessarily have to be Minecraft blocks in particular. So for example, you could build like shops where things are being sold as resources and commodities for the community. I have a little copper golem shop here, which is armed by some copper golems. There's a little workshop where you can maybe pretend that the copper golems are made. And there's a little shop here. You can come in, you can buy a chest or some blocks or a copper golem itself, just like as a little shop idea. And speaking of shops, we're now going into more theoretical stuff, a little bit more make-believe than the actual stuff we have in Minecraft. We have entertainment. Yes, your world is going to need entertainment. While playing Minecraft is good enough entertainment for us, the citizens of our world are going to want to do something with their downtime. So you're going to want to think about things like restaurants and bars. You may have plazas and playgrounds. You may have libraries or big shopping centers or anything like that. I have a big library here that's pretty close to my sort of city center. If I go up here, it does have a purpose. It has my librarians that are stuck on some honey blocks, so they jump around a bit weird. But yeah, I have my library here for some maybe studying or entertainment downtime of my villagers. I have a little cafe restaurant bit, or maybe just some outdoor seating right next to it. I have a pub or an inn here in one part of my world as well. This is my spawn, so when you spawn into the world, you can come out here and go straight into a little cozy, lovely restaurant area. But you might want to go to more natural routes, so you might want to build forests or beaches, you might want to build landmarks and things like that. Maybe there's tourism in your world. That's always fun to imagine. But remember to consider that entertainment can have a cost. So consider some free or maybe expensive entertainment if you wish to have an implied status system in your world. So you maybe have some free entertainment or cheap entertainment like, I don't know, fishing or racetracks or things like that. I'm not saying racing is cheap, but say like on foot maybe. But maybe have stuff that is a little bit more posh, like maybe have gardens with water fountains, and I have mine right next to my castle, so clearly you can tell this is meant to be fancy. And castles lead me on to quite a difficult point. Power. Is there power in your world? And not electric power, but power is in status, control, in a sense. I have a very generic sort of old school medieval fantasy Minecraft build castle here, which obviously implies a monarchy in my world. Perhaps it is me that sits on this chair. But maybe it's other people. I don't know. Is your power safe and just? For example, in my castle, I'm not saying this is me, but in my castle, I have totally not imprisoned villagers and an iron farm in here. That is terrifying. These poor villagers. Oh no. There it goes. If you have a governmental power, do you have a military that comes with it? For example, in my world, I have these little barracks over here, which are kind of hard to tell, but they could connect to the castle wall, which obviously circles the entire castle town, and they guard the entrance to the Nether, where all evil comes from. I actually recently burnt down, which is not a low reason. It actually just caught on fire from a gas shot. My barracks has got, a couple sleeping quarters, and then if we keep going up through the burnt down barracks, we have a little, manager's office, and then go on to the castle wall, which you can actually completely circle. It's not a very comfortable walk. I would prefer walking on, whatever these are called, the rails. But you can go up, and there's like a little training area here in the castle itself. You can go around it, see the view of everything around. I'm not saying you have to build this, but castles are cool. There's even a guard tower, which if we climb, we can have a good look around. Here's where I am, top of the world. And in my castle, I actually have a map of the area. This is the map room. This is, your strategic room. In case there was any conflict or something in my world, I just use it as a place to showcase the kind of history of the world, aka kind of the growth of it. As you can see, it's been built up over time. Of course, there's different systems of power that could all be played together, or maybe you just have one. You could have religion, for example. In my world, the sun is a good thing, and the night is bad and scary. Rule of Minecraft number 1, the night is bad and scary. So in my world, things that are facing east tend to have a little sun motif. They're kind of good and nice. Things that are on the west, well, they're a bit more scary and dark, and that's where the terrible monsters come from. It's a very basic kind of lore, but it's there. And that's why we have a giant sun for our city plaza, and why we have a little sun flag everywhere. Most places have a little sun flag. I just picked a very simple symbol to kind of define this city. You have your governments, you've got your religions, you could have your banks and monetary kind of status symbols. You could have technology, you could have magic, that's a magician's tower. This one works for the crown, but maybe in your world the magicians have revolted, or they rule the world. Either or. And the last point is geography. Now this is one that I've only just started recently working on. I think this is the most difficult one. I've kind of ordered them in orders of difficulty, I think, when it comes to world building. Geography may be easy in terms of a story, but it's a lot harder to put in practice in Minecraft, depending on how comfortable you are with terraforming, custom plants, and all that jazz. What is geography and how can it impact our world building? How do we consider it? Well, it can be as simple as, you know, the position of your city, your town, or your country in terms of the wider world, you know, specific literal geography. You know, are you south or north or west or east of anything, and how would that impact the trade routes? Where would things come from, especially if you're planning on building a second settlement at some point or things like that. Like, for example, I haven't gotten there, but for me, this is my main base, and there is a village over this way across the pond. That would be sort of the second settlement, so to say. So how would these two settlements communicate? How would they do things? Well, aside from the nether portal, there is little docks that the game has given me, so that's what the ports are for. It's just a short boat trip away, but there is also a work in progress path, which is going to be leading sort of across that way at some point and up the mountain as well, for something that I haven't built yet, but I'm very excited to do. Then you have your other aspects of geography. For example, what kind of terrain do you have? And how does that impact Minecraft worlds? For example, I realized not too long ago that I had built everything for my castle town out of this sort of gradient, sandstone and mushroom blocks and dripstone and stuff, and I realized that I don't really have an explanation as to where some of those blocks and colors come from. So I decided to do these cliffs out of the sort of granite, mushroomy, kind of reddish tones here, specifically so I could explain, well, maybe they've been mined out of these cliffs or sections of these cliffs into building materials for the wall. Of course, I'm not good enough at building to let that kind of limit my color palette for my future builds, so I'm just going to build where I want and then retroactively add sources for materials if I want to. And how far you go with that is totally up to you. Are you wanting to have a giant forest that's also got a lumberyard that explains where all your wood comes from, or are we just going to build with whatever? I'm kind of a mixture of both. That's an example of the sort of terrain I'm going for, a little bit more forest, a little bit more rocky. It's something I've done recently and I'm not 100% sure how I feel about it yet, but that rocky terrain does also imply that it's kind of difficult to access that section. That's why our ports and stuff are over on the side where it's a lot more gentle and slopier. And that also kind of works with the culture of my world, where the sunset is worse. That's the rougher terrain. Where the sun rises, that's nice terrain. We can go to the beach there easily. You can use the terrain for other things as well. For example, my castle, if you can tell here, it's actually on a big cliff. And that means that people from the castle maybe will look down on all of this. How would this make the villagers feel? Would the villagers feel calm and protected, or would they feel scrutinized? I'm not sure. I haven't thought about that part of my world yet, but that is an idea for where the story could go. Perhaps these villagers working these fields here, seeing this castle, maybe they feel grateful. They're like, wow, that's a very impressive castle. I'm so happy to be here. Maybe they feel the opposite. I don't know. It does mean they have to walk uphill to get to the town. Very sad. And there's 100 different ways to explore geography and its effect on the world building. If you have a bunch of like coastal islands, perhaps it's a seafaring sort of nation. Maybe you just have little farmer fields and it's more stable and calm and quiet. Maybe you go the opposite way and you break the stereotypes of the geography. The world is really your oyster, and Minecraft gives you so many tools. You could take the landscape as what you get, or you could build something of your own and you just start with something simple. Of course, if it's a flower world, I recommend don't rush into it. Take your time, enjoy the process. Just to recap, the points are sleep, food, transport, resources, entertainment, power, and geography. If you start considering some of these things or all of them or however many you want, I'm sure you'll be able to create something that feels immersive, that you love, and tells a story if you wanted to tell a story. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.